Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So this one's going to be kind of my thoughts, discussion on the Avatar publishing panel, the Avatar Legacy panel from San Diego Comic-Con. So it happened last night, which was actually super early in the morning for me, so it's quite a few hours afterwards here, but by the time it was over, it was like 4:30 like a.m. my time. Wasn't really able to record a video. But obviously, as you've seen probably from the title and the thumbnail, we do get some news, but maybe not a ton of news. So really quickly, something that did come out a little bit afterwards about the panel before this, which was the podcast panel, the Braving the Elements panel. A lot of us were wondering, did Isabella Betcher say anything, because she's the Avatar Studios representative on the panel, did she say anything about Avatar Studios, the animation stuff? Seems like we got the very standard cookie cutter response of, you know, they were not able to announce any projects just yet, just reassurance that something is coming. So very much the Mike and Brian stuff is coming style response here. At least they acknowledged it, but given how long Avatar Studios we've known about it, this is quickly becoming like a bit of an unacceptable style of response. You can't keep giving these at these cons anymore. So I hope this is one of the last times that we get this sort of thing. They might do it again at New York Comic-Con, but I do think for both cons next year, you have to have news. Like you just can't not have news is my thoughts basically. You just have to deliver. But anyway, let's get into the publishing panel. Now, thankfully, we had at least one person live tweeting the panel. So major thanks to Obby Dent on Twitter here, live tweeting throughout the whole thing. So we actually have a proper sense for what happened on a sort of minute-to-minute basis across the panel. So the panelists were, of course, Randy Rabai, FCE, I think it was the Abrams kind of publisher, the Abrams books editor on the Avatar books, someone from Webtoons, and I think that was it. And Cara O'Neill is the moderator. I'm not sure what the rest of the stuff was. But anyway, apparently the room was fully packed out. It was a pretty late panel as well. Like remember that, like it was at like 7:30 San Diego time, so like one of the later panels. They started off by saying, "We will add some new announcements today." And if that's correct, and they said like new announcements plural, then I don't actually think they did. We got one new announcement, and everything else, like there were technically pieces of news within some of the other kind of things they showed off, but there was no new announcements. Because I think on a publishing panel, when you say announcement, I do take that to be new book revealed, basically. But you know, we'll get into it. So yeah, they talk about the transition from FCE to Randy Rabai. Again, a lot of the panel is stuff like this. The new Roku book has come out, so they're going to do a bit of an interview segment with Randy Rabai and talk to the authors about that sort of thing, because they had like 3 people on the panel. Now, if you've listened or read any of the Randy Rabai interviews that have come out over release week, of course, for the Roku book, I don't really think there's anything super interesting or unique in terms of what gets sort of like talked about here. I'm pretty sure most of what he has mentioned here is stuff that I think we have seen FCE and Randy Rabai say in previous interviews. I'd recommend maybe reading through this thread in more detail if you want maybe all the information, but I'm going to skip to the kind of bigger stuff overall. So they do announce the next Roku book. Now, interestingly, I actually found the listing for this just a few minutes before they actually revealed it at the panel. So I was actually able to more or less get the scoop on this. So Roku Book 2, Chronicles of the Avatar Book 6, The Awakening of Roku, by Randy Rabai. So he's back. He didn't have to wait too long to avoid answering all those questions with nothing to announce yet, because they were planning to announce it at the panel here. So publication date July 15th 2025. So very much in line with other books, maybe actually like probably a week maybe earlier than we might have expected it, but we'll see what happens there. So they have all that stuff. It's hardcover, of course. It's not the final cover, obviously. The description they have here is very generic. There's no detail to that. It's just it's a follow-up to Reckoning of Roku. It is a duology, of course, they confirm it here. And yeah, Spirit of No Nation gets referenced here, even if the lesson comes at great personal cost. I would not really read into that too much, because that was basically associated with the first book as well. It is the conclusion to a duology, and it will apparently leave readers breathless. So we'll see what happens here. Ultimately, it is cool to have it confirmed, but there's really nothing to say here, because I would say most of the titles for these books don't really mean that much. It is just word of name of Avatar. In that, like, book 1 of Roku, was there really a reckoning? Not quite. I think they say the word reckoning at some point later in the book, but like, it's not quite as intense as that might be made out to be. Similarly here, the idea of like the awakening of Roku, the assumption here would just be that, okay, the first book was about like his first mission, going from completely lacking in confidence, doesn't believe he can do the role, to coming out of it in a pretty good position, and now this is potentially the idea of he goes from strength to strength, and it truly is the awakening of Roku as an avatar, that here is a character who actually does have this deep potential that he initially didn't see within himself. We'll see what exactly the plot ends up being. I am predicting it to probably being a little bit more Earth Kingdom focused, because towards the end of the first book there is some rather direct setup, I think, for something, but it depends on what they jump in with, like how much of a time skip are we going to do jumping into this book, because I think some of us might want them to jump ahead quite a few years so we can maybe go to Roku's next bending teacher, so Takukak, but that would have to be like a 3-4 year jump ahead to get to that point. And I'm not sure they're going to do that because it is YA. So this is the announcement for this panel. There's nothing else that we're going to go through is like a full-on reveal of anything else. I like that they did it. It's actually very impressive from Abrams that they were able to announce this like completely, like basically a full year ahead of time, because it was already sort of impressive that the Roku book they were able to confirm at New York Comic-Con last year, because usually I think prior to this the books were always like confirmed in like January or February ahead of the July release, but now of course we've had a sort of October confirmation for the first Roku book, and now we're getting a July confirmation for next July. So Abrams are on it. They certainly know what they're doing. So the Chronicles of the Avatar series is going super well for like Avatar Studios and everyone involved. There's no real problems there at all. So there's that. They, of course, had someone from Webtoons on. So all we basically got there is like the first 3 comics are in vertical scrolling format, Webtoons. I guess a lot of people maybe aren't super familiar with this, but right now they're up to the search. They've started the search. I don't think they're super far into it, but they're going to get through it. So I'm not sure what the idea here is, or like, is the first batch going to be they're going to do the Promise, the Search, and the Rift? Then there might be a little bit of a break, but it does seem like they ultimately are planning to do the other trilogies. So Smoke and Shadow, North and South, and Imbalance, and then I guess they'll move on to figuring out what way they're going to do about distributing Korra and maybe some of the short story content and stuff like that. Series is 6 million views on Webtoons. I think if you look up the Avatar page, it's like 6.7 when last I checked, but still very, very successful. It's a high ranked Webtoons, so it's doing very well. This is an interesting note. This may be opening up new partnerships between Webtoons and Dark Horse. They're like editor's note, Webtoon exclusive comics in the future. So obviously that's the idea of, that's just speculation on behalf of the person live tweeting, but that's the only real interpretation you could have about this, I think. Like, what do they mean by that? Because you're basically already just putting all the Dark Horse books up on Webtoon. So, like, does this just mean Korra? Or otherwise, the idea would be that, yeah, like, the only way to interpret that is exclusive Webtoons content, which I think would be very cool. I think it is something that is kind of needed in Avatar, the idea of a weekly release of like new content. I think we've always needed that. It's always something I look at when I see like mangas, and I cover like stuff like Boruto, which is a monthly manga on the channel. It's cool to have that very, very regular content, which we really have never had for Avatar, because we only have had like 2 shows, and then the comics, even at their best, have been 4 months between comics. And while that was good for like 72-page comics, I think we could definitely do with like the idea of having something that is weekly, or a monthly kind of chapter release type thing for comics, because that's basically what Webtoons is. And then also, I guess that would maybe be just the partnership in reverse of like exclusive stuff that comes out on Webtoons, but Dark Horse is the one to publish it in physical. So that's an interesting one. So yeah, more Webtoons coming. Magpie Games, they do talk about it here. Irish Iroh Adventure Guide here, narrated by Iroh. We go to Jasmine Island. Starts as a sleepy island in the Kyoshi era and now deals with the same issues as Republic City in the Korra era. Has new art and 5 adventures and 10 new legend NPCs. This is basically stuff we've already known. I would say the new art is relatively new information. And that you can see here, they show off one piece of art here at least. So this, I guess, is a look at Jasmine Island. So very, very cool here. I think from the Iroh perspective, I think we know that it relates to like T, and it's like important to his relationship with Liu Ten. But that's what we're going to find out about, I guess, when we actually get to see the book. Because the idea of this book, if you don't remember, is that it's an adventure guide. So it's one adventure in each of the 5 eras covered in the game, which is Kyoshi era, Roku era, 100-Year War era, Aang era, and Korra era. So it's all of them in this book are going to be set on or around Jasmine Island, and we're kind of going to get to see the evolution of this island across all of these generations, because they're kind of introducing how to do kind of generational storytelling into the RPG. So I guess there'll be a couple of pieces of new art of Jasmine Island, maybe across the eras. And then they always, with the legend NPCs, have a brand new piece of art for that character. So for anyone wondering, we of course have confirmation of like Liu Ten is going to be one of them. So that should be really cool. Pian Dao, Heiran, Tagaka, Kandro, Zaison, even though we already have a legend NPC, so it'll be interesting to see if that's just a repeat or if there's new Zaison information in that one. And then like who else is there? There's like older Toph, Iroh from the Aang era, I think, is in this as well. Tonrock is going to be in here as well. And then I think there's only one character that we don't know yet who it's going to be. But it says it comes out in the fall. But realistically, like, for those of us who have pre-ordered it, we should be getting the digital file of this kind of any week now. So when they say the fall, I think they do mean like public release, official release, and obviously when the physical books will be properly available. But the digital release, so like when you'll see probably a video from me on this, won't be super far away, but we actually don't know when that is. So there's that. New kids book from the Cabbage Merchant's POV. So that is just my cabbages. Again, we have already had most of the preview stuff. The book is out next month. I think actually exactly a month from now. I think it's the 27th. And we've already had a couple of preview pages. The notable thing about my cabbages, of course, is that it's the first sort of kids picture book that actually has new content. And we know straight away from one of the first preview pages is that it reveals the Cabbage Merchant's actual name, which is CAI. So Say or Kai, I'm not sure about the pronunciation. Then they show I Am Toph, which has been confirmed already. This is for like what, January, I think 2025. But they show preview pages here, early preview pages. So it looks like we're going to get a double page spread covering Toph learning earthbending from the Badger Moles, which is very, very cool. And this one should feel a little bit different, I think, and cover a few different scenarios than some of the other books. So this will be fun, even if the I Am books are not like the most interesting kind of pieces of content overall. They once again highlight the Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer here. Apparently they said they were new preview pages, but as far as I'm aware, these are the preview pages we have had since like January. Like this book has been oddly delayed, and we've had every single stage of like the pre-release stuff already. So it's just about it actually releasing now at this point. We just need to know what actually is happening next. weird little detail here. Llama Paka from the Yang Chen books makes an appearance in the Iroh comic. So we finally, I suppose, are going to get to see what a Llama Paka properly looks like, which is kind of cool. So that's interesting. They do, once again, like they did at the panel yesterday, or the day before actually, highlight the Mako comic, which of course is the mystery of Penxian Island. Note the really, really bad, really unfortunate typo here. It's February 25th/6th, 2025, but they say 24. And for this book, which was meant to initially be out in 2023, this is just like, oh, the irony of it. You couldn't make it up that they are teasing the idea that, look, the book's already out, but it's not actually. It's 2025, and yeah, the Tuesday and Wednesday date is why there's 2 dates listed here. But interesting thing here, they did show new preview pages. I think all 3 of these pages are new compared to the early preview pages that we had for the book from New York Comic Con last time out. So they're a little bit blurry, but you can make out what they are. Ultimately, I don't think you can say too much about them, because it seems like my interpretation of this is that this is probably the very opening pages of the book. That these pages lead into the preview pages we got last time out. So we're still very much in the opening of the book, and we don't get really an insight into where the plot really jumps into play in regards to where the connection to Naoki, their mother, kind of comes in. But briefly, I suppose attempting to go through it. Basically, it's Mako at his desk and some of the other newer detectives. Because I suppose this is us finding out that, with Lewin gone, basically kind of demoted effectively, we get introduced to some of the other detectives or officers on the force. And they basically come over to Mako to talk to him, and they're like, hey, your brother was in the Movers, right? Basically, hey, tell us about that. Mako's kind of like, yeah, he was, but not anymore. We never really talk about Movers overall. But they're like, hey, you must have some wild stories up here. And then the other guy's like, oh yeah, you two were also pro benders. You must have stories about that, right? And Mako's just like, yeah, it wasn't really that exciting. It was just a job, and so on. And it's just the idea of we're highlighting how much Mako focuses on his work to the point where it makes his co-workers feel that he is boring. That solve the case of your missing personality. Now they do immediately say, hey, we're just teasing, no hard feelings, Mako. And then on the other page here on the side, this one here, basically the alert comes in, detective needed in the lobby, and he immediately vaults over the table and comes out to meet the kids that of course are the kids where the mother comes in and takes them away before they can talk about anything. So this is, I guess, Mako being put onto the case of some incident happens, they'll investigate it, they'll realize there's a connection to their mother, head off to the Fire Island, and the plot will go from there. So we still don't have that much of a sense for how things properly kick off necessarily, but I suppose from the visuals here you can see, I guess, there's a bit of a Water Tribe influence for this family, which is kind of interesting. But it's maybe hard to tell with Republic City of the mixed culture, that sort of thing. But anyway, plot is something to do with Mako having to choose between his day job and they didn't catch it. Based on the description, it's basically between his day job and doing what is right, effectively. So he might not be given permission to actually go on this mission, but he does it anyway, which is him going against the by the rules Mako that we're being presented with in the preview pages, basically. Randy Rabai apparently says that there are interesting plans for tea in Awakening of Roku, which is interesting because the only real tea mention is just that what Roku Roku shares his tea with Gyatso, and Gyatso is basically ooh, Fire Nation tea is nice compared to Air Nomad tea, and he seems really into it now. Then there's just some questions going on this stuff. Then towards the end here, they do say this is an interesting one here. We have a lot of stuff we are working on. Avatar publishing will be ramping up soon. So that's interesting, but also it's pushing it out to the future, because ultimately there are no other announcements in this panel, and it's what are you talking about there? Like, is that confirming that there are like other series that are going to be like new that are coming out? Because the assumption there is that we can't announce them now, but like they're going to be announced maybe like over the course of the next year. So we're talking about books for probably like the end of 2025 into 2026, which is when Avatar Studio stuff should pretty much has to be happening. So this is, I'm guessing, the books that will be releasing alongside the animated content, leading into the animated content. And then maybe now that this is sort of the relaunch of the franchise, are they able to go back and do comic trilogies again? Might the comics finally now be able to do stories in the other eras, like a full-on Kyoshi comic? What sort of stuff are you talking about here? Is this Beast of the Four Nations? You're just waiting to release it during a more hype period? It's interesting. It's certainly a quote to keep in your head as we go forward of like, they said this, and will they actually deliver? And compare the idea of this is what we're getting now with apparently this is publishing ramping up. And what does that actually mean necessarily? Because Chronicles of the Avatar is going to continue. I'm guessing one-shots for Avatar and Korra will continue. Magpie will continue to do their thing. Other publishers will continue to put out other books. So what are we talking about other than tie-in books and that sort of thing? Is that what we're getting into here? Because if you really want to launch the franchise, you've got to have merchandise. That's probably the big thing overall. They talk about their dream stuff of like Randy would like to write a Lu Ten story, but he talked about this in a previous interview. FCE wants to do like a Dirty Dozen style story, but you know, it's just speculation basically. And yeah, they wrap up and they say, stay tuned for more news, which I immediately am like, stay tuned where? Like, what do you mean by this? Like, these panels are like where we get the news from. Are you talking about like, stay tuned to the next panel for information? Because they never post about this stuff like overall. I think the only official place I've seen mention the Roku Book 2 announcement is that Randy Rabai posted it on his Instagram. But like, other than that, they're not really kind of highlighting that because I guess it's an early announcement. So we go back again. I'll just highlight this once more of towards the start and what they said here. We'll add some new announcements today. By my count, there was only one new announcement, and that was Roku Book 2. Everything else we knew about. Like, we know about the Magpie Games. It's already been announced up for pre-order. Like, everyone knows about it. It's going to be out in a few weeks. This book has been known about for quite a while, and while the preview pages are new, it's just preview pages for a book we already know about. Nothing new here. The preview pages for the Mako comic, I guess, are kind of new. But of course, we knew about the Mako information from yesterday. So this isn't a new announcement for this panel. And then it's like, you didn't have anything else. So in my mind, they didn't deliver here. Because we now have to get into the final topic here, which is, why no announcement of the next Avatar one-shot? So basically the follow-up to Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer. Why nothing there? Because at this point, we're now going to get to, I'm guessing, we're going to get to New York Comic Con in October. And that might be when they finally do the announcement of that book. And then we're probably looking at like a late next year kind of release schedule. And it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, how have we gone from the comics being like a trilogy of comics being once every like 4 to 6 months, to all of a sudden it's 10 months to a year, basically. That's the new schedule for comics. I really am surprised that they didn't say what's next for Avatar, just because the two Dark Horse books here, like Mystery of Henshan Island and then Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, the only reason like both of them are not out yet is because of like super heavy like delays. And especially with Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, it seems like it's mostly kind of delays that like are not related to the actual like creatives on the book. Like it's not related to the art or anything like that. It's the actual like publishing logistics style stuff more than anything, because we know this book has been done for a very, very long time. We know they always work in threes, because where is this? Where's the Azula comic going to be collected? I'm guessing into a hardcover with whatever the next book is. So I'm super surprised that, like, basically we come into this. Dark Horse had no new announcement. Like, cool, you finally dated this, but the only reason it wasn't dated already is because it's been delayed. And I really struggle with the idea that, like, oh, we gave you your announcement from Dark Horse, when, like, no, you didn't. Like, this book was announced at New York Comic Con last year. This is just an update on it. You didn't actually announce anything new. And I think, given that I would still consider Dark Horse to be the main Avatar publisher of content, that's a really poor show in my mind. So I hope that when they say, like, they're planning for the future of publishing type thing, that publishing will ramp up. I really hope that that is applying, especially to Dark Horse, that something big is going to change, because this is not good enough. Like, 2 official panels, and we got a release date for a book we've been waiting on for months and months and months, and the earliest of earliest announcements of a very obvious thing, that we're going to get another, book 2 of a Chronicles of the Avatar book. Like, nothing exciting from both panels. And for Avatar in 2024, I think that's pretty shocking. And I hope that it's just the timing of SDCC this year with releases means that they weren't able to say anything, and that by the time we get to New York Comic Con and they have similar panels, that maybe they will have more to say. Maybe Magpie will start to talk about what the next book is and stuff like that. But I would say I'm coming out of the 2 panels here pretty disappointed, not even in anything related to Avatar Studios. I sort of get that it's a bit too early. Would it have been cool if they threw us a bone and just gave us something because of how long it's been? Sure. But just in terms of publishing news, the absolutely expected stuff, I still feel they heavily under-delivered. And we're in a situation now where Dark Horse this year have 1 comic, and it's this comic. And next year, right now, it seems to be only 1 comic. I don't understand what's going on at Dark Horse. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on all of this stuff from the Comic-Con panels. But yes, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.